Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to our webinar for this month. Today we're going to look at doing some collaborative qualitative analysis in Quirkos. It's one of the things that Quirkos Cloud lets you do really well. So we're going to do a quick session today just kind of giving an overview of how that works because we've not looked at it for a while. And if you've got any questions you can ask in the chat or on Twitter or send us an email, support@quirkos.com at any time if you're watching this after it's gone live. But we're going to start just giving you an overview of some of the collaborative features. We're going to talk a little bit about why it's a good idea to collaborate for qualitative analysis, because it's something that not a lot of people do, but it's becoming increasingly common. And then we're also going to look at some of the ways that Quirkos makes that simple, some of the requirements, and how to manage shared projects. So, the idea is that you can work together even when you're apart, and that's a big deal at the moment with a lot of countries still having COVID restrictions and a lot of universities with workplaces and offices shut down. So a lot of people were planning to collaborate on projects or develop new projects with collaborators across the world. And Quirkos Cloud lets you work with people wherever they are in the globe, whether you're working at the same time or different times, and it means that you can both look at the data at the same time, and it simplifies a lot of the things about managing the data, sharing the projects, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the advantages over doing it offline. So the collaboration can be simultaneous or sequel. So one of the very good things about Quirkos Cloud is it lets you do simultaneous collaboration. So everybody can be working on the project at the same time. There's no limit to the number of people that can be working on the project. And you can see other people's changes happen in real time. There's little chats, so you can talk to each other. And it means you don't have to worry about having different versions of the project. And you don't have to worry about kind of undoing someone else's work. So all that's kind of taken care of. You can also work sequentially though, so you don't have to work at the same time. So if somebody's got a couple of hours one day and somebody else works a couple of hours another day, that's fine. They'll just pick up where the other person left off. So you've got a continuous kind of flow of work going on the project. And it doesn't matter how you work, and sometimes you can work at the same time and sometimes you can work differently. And again, with the cloud, it means that you just don't have to worry about any of that. There's also unlimited storage, so you can have any number of projects with the Quirkos Cloud subscription, and you can share an unlimited number of projects, and you can have an unlimited number of collaborators on each project. The only thing is that everybody needs to have their own cloud account for security and privacy purposes, and that's the same for any other kind of subscription service really. Everybody needs to have their own kind of login and their own account. We don't recommend sharing logins because then you're sharing passwords and then you're sharing the data, and it also means that you can't use it collaboratively in that kind of way. You can't do the simultaneous collaboration, and you also can't do any of the kind of the project management kind of stuff. So you can't change who can access the project if there are certain people that can just look at the project but not edit it. So all those things require everybody to have their own account. Now you can do collaboration without using the Quirkos Cloud subscription. And the reasons that most people would do that is basically because they have an ethics board or an IRB requirement that they don't have the data stored anywhere other than on a particular computer, on a particular institution. So in that case, you can do offline collaboration. And basically that works the same way as you would collaborate, say, on a paper using the old version of Word. You would send a Word document backwards and forwards, and try and make sure that everybody's using the most up-to-date version that they're sharing after they've made any changes. So in that case, it becomes a manual case of managing the different collaborators, the different work they do, and the different changes. So with the offline version, you can do that. You can send project files backwards and forwards. Usually we recommend just doing that by email. That's quite secure. You may need to use something like an encrypted USB drive to send them backwards and forwards. I mean, that's up to your IRB. That's depending on what data protection requirements you have to have for the data you're working with. But it's certainly possible to do that. But the cloud is very secure. It's end-to-end and at rest encrypted when you've got password protection on the project. So It's extremely secure way of collaborating, but if that's just not permissible for how you need to work, you can do offline collaboration as well. I should also point out you can collaborate backwards and forwards between people who are working offline and on the cloud. That's not a problem as well. You can just send files backwards and forwards to each other. So now I'm just going to do a quick kind of demonstration of some of the main kind of collaborative features and how all that works in Quirkos Cloud. So when you start Quirkos, it's software you need to download and install on your computer. You'll have the option here either to log in with a Quirkos Cloud account or work in offline mode. There's a separate license for the offline mode. Today we're going to look at the cloud collaboration features really. So I'm going to log into my account. And I've got all of these projects here, projects that have been shared with me. So these are ones which I didn't create, but other collaborators have shared with me. And the ones at the top are the projects that I created. So these may or may not be shared with other people. Usually these will be. So I'll just choose this webinar example project at the top. Okay, oh, this is just the breakfast project. So this is from a previous webinar we did the other day. So we brought in our sources of data to the project. We're not going to go all over the nuts and bolts of this today. We've created codes. We've done some coding to them. You can double click and see the different bits that we've coded to the different codes and themes that we have here. What else do we have? That's pretty much everything really. So a pretty simple project that we have here. The first thing that I'll show you for the collaboration is the little chat button here. So there's a live chat built into Quirkos. You can use this just for keeping track of your project, keeping notes and memos for yourself, but you can also use it to talk to other people. So for example, you may have someone say, hello, not sure what to do with the dietary issues code. Should it called something else? And then someone else can get back to you and question that and talk on that. So the chat is quite useful because it shows you what user says that and when. So whether you're working live, so this will pop up with a kind of flashing yellow icon if somebody's just popped up a new message for you that you've not read. But you can also use it offline. So if you're working sequentially, you can see any comments from somebody just before you start doing kind of your coding. So how did it work for the person who was working on that before? So the chat's very useful, and then everything else just works the same. But basically the difference is that while you're working, someone else can be working at the same time, and you'll see their changes come up on the screen as well. And what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to give you a little demonstration by logging in on another computer here, and then showing you what it looks like when some other ghostly person is working on the project at the same time, and also what the kind of chat looks like when it's all going on sequentially. But I'm also going to show you how you do the project sharing, because at the moment that has to happen on our website. So you have to do the project sharing settings on the website. And to do that, you just need to log into the, I'll show you right here. So if you go to www.quirkos.com and account, it'll just ask you to log in. And then you'll see here, these are the kind of login details, and we can change these. But here on the projects list, we can see all the other projects that we have that I've created in the project. And you can see this cloud chat one here. This has already been shared with someone because it's got blue icon on the shared button there. So here's my webinar example project that I'm working on right now. And all I have to do is click on the share button there. It says project currently not shared. So share with, and we're going to share this with support.quirkos.com because there's another account there. And you can choose the access level. So there's read. So that means that they can just look at the project, but they can't edit or write in it. Or there's the write project. So that means somebody has full access and they can change things in the project. So I'll just click on the share button there. And as long as somebody, there's someone who has account associated with that email address, you can share projects with them. So you just need to know the email address that somebody's registered their account to. And you can add other people as well. So if I put in info at Quirkos, whoops, you can have as many people as you like, basically. And if I do that, it's going to say there's no account. Oh no, there is. Okay, right. So we've got another testing account there. So that person only has read privileges. And someone else there has write privileges. We can remove all the shares from the project, or we can also change their access here. So at the moment, this person is at read only, so they can look at the project, but they can't change anything. And I'm just going to change it so that it's write access. Okay. And now you can see there's that little blue icon there. And now on my other computer here, I can see I've logged in as the support account, and I can see I've now been given access to this example project, which is great. So if I go back now to Quirkos here, if I open the chat window here so you can see these pop up, I can now start talking to you from another computer. So right, so I'm D Turner in one and Daniel Turner in the other. So we can talk backwards and forwards. If there are new messages, it will pop up and flash. Right, so it's flashing there, there's a new message. We can talk backwards and forwards. And if I'm doing any editing or coding on the other computer, you'll see it pop up here. So if I start adding some codes to Barry's to breakfast here, you can see that someone else's work is popping up in real time. And you can query them about that. Don't code to that source yet, for some reason. So you've got a complete environment basically to collaborate, to manage that collaboration, and to work together. You've also got full undo and redo capabilities here, so you can undo your own actions, not someone else's, and you can also edit any kind of part of the project, and either of you can generate any of the outputs and export different options here. So it's very easy to collaborate with a large team, and what I can do here is if I run a query here, so let's query for highlight author. Yeah, right. So what we can do is you can see all the different actions from different people. So we've got D Turner here, we've got Daniel Turner. So if we update, you can see those are the two things that I just did on the other computer as Daniel Turner. And this is all the work on the left that I've done as D Turner. So it's very easy to see what work was done by particular people. And then we can have a discussion and I can change the mind, so I can undo that person's work. So it's you're also able to see who created what particular codes, who did what particular bits of coding as well. What Quirkos doesn't have is any kind of way to formally do statistical analysis of inter-rater reliability. And what I mean by that is sometimes people want to see what percentage agreeance there was over the coding. So did everybody code everything exactly the same way? There's a couple of reasons why we don't support that. You can export the data and do that in SPSS or R, but basically it's very difficult with qualitative research to make that distinction. So if somebody's coded a whole paragraph rather than just one sentence in that, is that an agreement or not? Statistically not, but it may be actually that they're finding the same thing in the same text, they just chose to highlight a different amount of it. There's also issues really coming together with kind of how the codes are applied, which is easy to see when you kind of step back and read it. So that's why we have these views like this, which allow you to see the comparative difference and to see how much collaboration there is here. So for us here, I know I've undone all that work, so let's put that back again. We can see here that there was very little agreement. Now that may be because people were using different codes or using different sources. But you can also see here, so this what is it called? Barriers to breakfast. That code was used a lot by Daniel Turner, but not D Turner at all. And what's interesting, I think, in these kind of situations is to discover why and to go back and read and see and use that understanding of difference to spark debate about why that was coded and interpreted in a different way. And this is qualitative research. We don't want to go back and quantize that. We don't want to rely on a quantitative statistic for a qualitative process. That really doesn't apply to most qualitative methodologies, to suddenly adopt a quantitative method. So you've got that ability to do that if you need to. You can export the data. You have to export here and export spreadsheet CSV. You'll get all the data exported and coded, all the different coding attempts by the different people, and then it's very easy in SPSS or R to do iterative reliability there. And you can have all the parameters to make sure that you're doing it in the right way, and that you understand the statistic that you're trying to run on it. But we don't support that within Quirkos. But what we do support is these different ways to actually go back and read the data. Quirkos is not a quantitative tool. It's designed for pure qualitative research, and it's designed for you to explore the differences in your qualitative coding and interpretation. And hopefully you will find your collaboration to be useful, to be working together in this kind of way, and that it's either going to cut the time that you need because you'll be coding different sources. So for example, you may say, please code Simon's source, and then somebody can do half of the data and someone else can do the other half. You can also do it for sense checking, so to see if you're coding the same way. The other things to bear in mind when you're collaborating on projects is how important the description is. So barriers to breakfast, what on earth does that mean in this case? We need to be very clear when we're working with other people what that means. And Quirkos has this ability to put the level of detail that you would have in a kind of collaborative code book. So we've got this title, barriers to breakfast. What does that mean? So let's be specific about that. Anytime that people have something that stops them having breakfast, e.g. time, family, stress, I don't know. So we've been much more specific about that, what that is. And if you hover the mouse over that code, you'll also see the description there as well, so you'll understand what you're doing. Another very useful thing to put in here, is the different kind of examples. So you would also give sometimes examples about where you would and where you wouldn't apply that particular code. So I might say barriers to breakfast, it's not about things like just lack of hunger. That wouldn't be classified as a barrier. It's things that physically stop people that want to be having breakfast from having breakfast in this silly example. So make sure that you are documenting your codes and how they should be applied in a way that everybody can understand. Again, with the CSV export, you're able to export all of the data in a spreadsheet file, and you can use that to print out your codebook if you need to, and just have it on a separate screen if you want to have the whole thing open, although it is all kind of described here. So if you're using something like grounded theory and you're all creating codes as you go along, you need to be describing them so that people understand how they should be using them and what they really mean. If you're doing something like a kind of framework analysis where you've created your coding framework before you start, it's very common in collaborative projects because it makes sure that you don't have lots of people creating duplicate codes. Then again, you would do the same thing. You've discussed what the codes are going to be, you've discussed the descriptions, and then you can just create those in Quirkos. So new code about breakfast, and then a long description here about what that's going to imply. Now, another thing that you'll probably find is, let's call this stopping breakfast. So maybe somebody created code called stopping breakfast, or not having breakfast, and that seemed to be too similar to the barriers code. And if there's a large group of you, or even if there's just two of you doing grounded theory, it'll often be the case that you'll create codes which have kind of similar meanings, and later on you want to merge them together. So I don't have anything in here. Yeah, but let's just quickly put something in there. So what I can do is I can right click on stopping breakfast, I can go to merge, I can merge that into the barriers to breakfast code there. We don't need to call it merged. There, okay. So barriers to breakfast pops up and we can change it, any aspect of it if we like. But now we've got this code here in the barriers to breakfast. So again, there's all these tools to manage the codes and the coding within Quirkos that help with collaboration. And this does make it a lot easier, especially compared to kind of working offline and especially working with paper and highlighters. It's a very difficult way to kind of collaborate, especially if you're kind of part of a large team. So the software can be very helpful in those kind of circumstances, just to manage the physical and virtual kind of aspects of ensuring that the data makes sense, that everybody can access it and work with it, and then at the end of it that you have something which will help you write up, and that's the end of the whole thing really. So again, with the export options, you can export the transcripts back out as Word files. You can generate reports which show you lots of information, and the reports will also show you who did what particular piece of coding, and those things will really help you when you come to the writing up process. So that's basically most that I'm going to talk to you about today about collaboration. The last thing I'm going to say is about how you would do kind of offline collaboration. So if you've got any questions, do put them in the chat, and when I finish this last bit, I'll get right to them. So although we're working in the cloud, and that means the data is stored not on our computer but on our remote secure servers, you can at any time click on project and then save as, and then you can give it a new name, and that will be a duplicate name on the server. You can also download the project, and that will give it a new name, and we can save it here. So we can call this exported example project, project from webinar. Very long file. Anyway, so now we've got the whole project kind of saved offline. And a lot of people want to do that as they go along. So they've kind of got a snapshot as they're going along. But the other thing that you would want to do is you can email that file to someone. So somebody that's not working with the cloud, you can then send it to them, and then they can work on it, and then they can edit it. And what you can do later on is there's also this merge projects option here. And what you can do here is choose other projects. So you've got the project that we're working on at the moment. That's the master project. That's the one where if there's any disagreements about things like the source properties, the master project is the one where we take the, that's the one that should be correct. So if anybody's changed the sources or anything, that's the one that we think is correct. So that's usually kind of the PI or the main researcher's kind of project. And then any other projects that people have worked on, we can choose here and bring them in. So we can bring in some other project. Oh, right, okay, can't bring in that project. But we can put them together and then merge everybody's work back together. And in exactly the same way, once the project is merged, we'll be able to see everybody's work together, anybody's codes that they've created, all their coding, and we'll be able to look and compare to see who did what particular piece of work. So it just requires that your collaborators just email you an updated file as they're going along, and maybe you need to merge that together and then send them back a new template to start working from. So if you're working offline, you need to manage that process a little bit more, but because the Quirkos project files are quite small, it's very easy to kind of email them backwards and forwards between each other. My only tip for that is just make sure that the file names are very descriptive so that you know exactly what you have. So for example, don't just send the same project name back. Say this is Daniel's webinar example project from August 27th or whatever, so that you know exactly what you're merging and what's in each kind of project file. Again, if you're working online and on the cloud, all that kind of stuff gets taken care of you by the system. But if you're working offline, it's no problem for collaboration. It just has to be done in that kind of manual way. Great, so plenty of viewers but no questions today. So that's everything that we were going to show you today. Thanks so much for coming along. If you want to give Quirkos a try, you can go and download the software on our website, sign up for a 14-day trial, which is completely free, and you'll only be billed at the end of the period if you don't cancel at that stage, and you can cancel any time in that account page. You can also try the offline version for up to 28 days. And the features between the offline and the cloud version are identical, except for obviously things like the chat's not live and the live sharing and things like that. So you can always go backwards and forwards between the two. So hopefully Quirkos is going to be a useful tool for you to help collaborate on your project, or if you ever need to collaborate on a project in the future. We think Quirkos is very simple and intuitive, Do look at the other videos on our YouTube channel. They're not just about learning the software, which I've not really gone into very much today, about the specifics of sources and codes and so on. But there's also things there about general kind of starting qualitative coding, different types of coding and so on. So there's some generic tools and information available there as well. Thanks so much for coming along today, and don't forget to visit www.quirkos.com.